بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. So last week we were talking about the very difficult situation that Imran ibn Husayn Radiallahu Anhu came into when he was faced with this choice between two parties, both pious people, Sahaba Ridwanullahi Majma'in on both sides. He had to make a choice between either siding with one or the other or just completely backing out of it. And his decision was very important because he was one of the leaders of Basra, one of the elders, and everybody looked up to him, right? So his decision would have an impact not just only on himself, but also on everybody in the community around him. And so everybody had their eyes on him and what he was about to do. So last week we talked about how he decided that he's not going to get involved at all. And he wished that he was rather just a black man with a cut nose, just grazing his sheep on the peak of the mountain and living like that his whole life is better for him than that he shoots a single arrow, whether it hits its target or not. But he would prefer that over this, that he be a person just grazing sheep and on his own is better than him that he joins the battle on one side or the other and shoots an arrow, whether it hits its target or not, meaning whether he is victorious or on the side of defeat. Either way, he would not want to be involved in it at all. But there were other challenges that the Sahaba Ridwanullahi Majma'in faced during that time as well. Very, very big challenges. And one of those is that one would think that since this was the time of Sahaba Ridwanullahi Majma'in, so people would know where to go when they needed guidance. You had the direct spiritual descendants of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and students of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in the form of Sahaba. You had any issue, go to the Sahaba Ridwanullahi Majma'in. But what was happening was, because of all the chaos and all the ikhtilafat, the dispute going on, it gave rise to many groups, and more specifically, one sect that emerged from this whole dispute and disagreement between two big parties was the group called the Khawarij. And this was a group of people who thought they could bypass the Sahaba Ridwanullahi Majma'in and understand the deen on their own without the need of the guidance of the Sahaba Ridwanullahi Majma'in. And this completely is a violation of the basic principle of Islam, which is the importance of sanad, meaning learning our deen through the transmission, right? Transmission means we learn our deen from our elders who learn their deen from their elders, who learn their deen from their elders, and that's how deen has been passed on from generation to generation for over a millennium, right? Some people decided we're not going to follow that tradition anymore. And that concept exists now, it existed then. It had started from the time of the Sahaba Ridwanullahi Majma'in, where people decided we can go directly to the Quran and we'll understand it on our own because we're intelligent enough to make our own decisions. So the Khawarij was one such group, extremely opinionated, extremely literalist in their interpretation of the Quran. And because of that, they were extremely rude, rash, very arrogant in their attitude towards anybody who came in front of them. And I'm going to narrate two incidents specifically, one related to Imran ibn Husayn Radiallahu Anhu, about what their character was like and how they became as a result of their methodology of understanding the deen, right? And bypassing the tradition of going through a transmission, right? But before we get into that, somebody once asked Imran ibn Husayn Radiallahu Anhu about what to do in the time of fitna. Okay. So we know that Imran ibn Husayn Radiallahu Anhu himself never got involved in the dispute between Aisha Radiallahu Anha and Ali radiallahu anhu. And likewise with Ali radiallahu anhu, between Ali radiallahu anhu and Amir Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. He backed out completely. So I'm not going to get involved. In fact, last time we even mentioned how he sent somebody to the masjid to go and make an announcement. Don't get involved in this. I swear to you by Allah, I ransom my mother and father for you. Please stay out of this whole thing, because many people are going to die and you're going to lose a lot of blood and you're going to shed a lot of blood. And guess what? At the end of the day, both sides are going to be Muslims. This is not good for us. I would definitely encourage you to withdraw and not get involved in this, because he knew the people of Basra were on the side of Aisha radiallahu anha and they wanted to fight. And they completely ignored him and even to a certain extent denounced him, and went ahead and fought on the side of Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu ta'ala anha, and many huffaz of hadith and Quran died in that battle of Jamal. So when he was asked this question of what to do in the time of fitna, one would think that he would say, don't be involved, don't take part in anything, but that's actually not what he was saying. Okay, so let me go through this dialogue that took place between two people. His name is Abu Qatada, and Abu Qatada asked him the question about what to do in time of fitnas, and that was his time he was referring to, that, any time somebody come knocking at your door and say to you, you know what, do you believe this? No. Okay, I'm going to kill you. And that's what the Khawarij did, and even people from both sides did that. Like people from the side of Ali radiallahu anhu, they would come and they would say, listen, what do you say about Ali radiallahu anhu? And if the other person said, I respect him, but I'm not on his side, I disagree with him, he would take his sword and cut your head off. So there was that form of jahiliyyah on both sides. Ali radiallahu was not in agreement with that way of thinking and that kind of fanaticism. Neither was Amir Muawiyah, but there were people there who were like that in both sides, that were creating more and more fitna. So this is why the question is being asked to Imran ibn Husayn radiallahu anhu. So he said, Ilzam masjida. If fitna is going on outside, stay in the masjid. In other words, engross yourself in the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't get involved in the politics. Don't get involved in talking to people about this. Don't get involved in the gossip related to this. He said, so Abu Qatada went on, he said, but what if somebody comes to my door? فَإِن دُخِلَ عَلَيَّ, comes to me in my house, enters upon me, and then demands that I believe this or believe that. He said, Ilzam baytak, right? Stay in your house. Don't let anybody in. He said, but what if somebody comes in your house and then demands, first is the masjid, somebody comes and enters the masjid and demands that you believe this. He said, then go to your house and stay in your house. He said, what if somebody comes to my house and demands me to do this or do that or believe in this or believe that in the house? Then what do? He said, لو دخل علي رجل يريد نفسي وما لي رأيت أن قد أقتله. My understanding is that somebody comes into my house and he demands me to believe this or that or think this or that, and I refuse, and he decides to fight with me and kill me, then I have the right to defend myself and my family and my wealth, and that would not be considered fitna. Otherwise, it's fitna. So you're in your masjid and somebody comes and demands, what do you believe about this? And you know, if you don't answer the way he wants, he's going to hurt you. So Imran ibn Husayn radiallahu anhu says, go home. Don't stay in the masjid. If the situation in the masjid is like that, go home. But what if they enter into the home? Then you can fight. Then it wouldn't be fitna. Otherwise, it's fitna. The point that I'm making is that Imran ibn Husayn radiallahu anhu is defining the meaning of fitna and how important it is to stay away from fitna at all costs, except when the occasion comes that you have to save your family, yourself, and your wealth. So staying away from fitna is the most important thing. That's because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned, وَالْفِتْنَةُ أَكْبَرُ مِنَ الْقَتْلِ. Fitna is worse than qatl, murder itself. Right? That's why we say, right, there's a mas'ala that in salah, let's say there's two lines standing, and a person comes and he stands behind the second line, and there's nobody else with him to stand with him. What he can do is tap on somebody in the back from the second saf and pull him back. Okay? But what if that person who's being dapped on doesn't know what this person means to do? He thinks that this guy is interrupting my salah, and what is he, playing games with me or something? And he starts a fight with you, right? There's a possibility. A lot of people don't know basic masail. So he may think you're trying to disturb his salah, and it may cause, disruption. He'll come out and you say, "Whoa, what do you think you're doing?" And punch you out or hurt you or get angry with you, right? In that case, since this may be a cause of fitna, then it's better for you just to pray salah on your own in the third saf. If you feel strongly that it will be a cause of fitna, just pray salah in the third saf on your own. There are many, many masail like that, where you would do amal upon the mas'ala, but if there's a chance of fitna erupting because of it, then you back out. Because you have to stay away from fitna at all costs. Sometimes saying something good may be a cause of fitna, then you keep your silence. Amr bil ma'roof, nahi anil munkar. People say we have to enjoin the good and forbid the evil. But what if enjoining the good increases the fitna? That can happen in many cases. There was one brother, he came to me, for his mom who was leading the salah in the masjid, had his pants below the ankles. So after the salah finished, he went up to him and he said, "I don't know if anybody's salah counts or not, but I'm going to pray my salah again because you kept your pants below the ankles and that's a sign of arrogance, and I don't want an arrogant imam." Maybe it was the truth, maybe it's based on hadith, but you can't. You can't come out so direct like that. Right? So Imam was not happy. And he came to me saying to me, "I don't know why the Imam reacted that way." And even people are making a big deal about it. Like, what did I say wrong? It's from the hadith. Right? Maybe he's right. Right? But the point is, it still became a cause of fitna. It still became a cause of fitna. So in that case, I told him, I said, "Listen, this is the rule. The rule is, what you said is right, but since it became a cause of fitna, then it's better than to keep it quiet. Because fitna, we have to avoid at all costs. The best way to deal with the issue is educate the people about the deen. This is why we have these type of gatherings, to educate the people about the deen. Right? More people are educated, less chances of these type of things happening. Right? So, this is the basic principle that he is establishing in this question and answer. Next. So there's this man, his name keeps coming up. When I was looking up Imran ibn Husayn and many other Sahaba Ridwanullah Majma'in in the past, I saw his name coming up many, many times. And I kept on wondering, who is this guy? First I thought it was Sahabi, but when I read the things he was saying, I knew this guy is not even close to being maybe not even be a believer. His name is Nafi' bin Azraq. And I read his name when I was studying many other Sahaba in the past too. First time right now I'm bringing his name up. And the reason I'm bringing him up is because I want to show you how in the time of Sahaba, the fitna were really big, just as they are in our time too. Like there were big fitnas going on even then, even though the Sahaba were there in that time and it was the best era, but there were fitnas were rising, right? And imagine if it was happening in the time of Sahaba. Now we live in a time where there is a dearth of awliya Allah and ulama ikram and veracious scholars, right? Then the likelihood of such fitna happening is much, much greater, right? So this Nafi' bin Azraq was one of the leaders of a group of Khawarij. The Khawarij had many subsects. One of them was the Azariqa, and he was the leader of the Azariqa. Actually, the word Azariqa is named after his last name, Azraq. Very rude man. He often used to go to Ibn Abbas Radiallahu anhuma and start arguing with him about different ayahs of Quran Kareem. And Ibn Abbas Radiallahu anhuma was known as Hibrul Ummah, Like he was the greatest mufassir of Quran Kareem that this ummah has known. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give him the hikmah of Quran Kareem, the understanding and fiqh of Quran Kareem. And Umar radiallahu anhu had immense trust and respect for Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, to the extent that in his council where he used to do his mashwara on big issues and affairs, Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu would be in that gathering where most of the other people in the council were all senior Sahaba who were from the Battle of Badr or the Battle of Uhud. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu was a young kid at that time. But he would be a part of that council because he trusted in him. His knowledge, his fahm, his insight, his understanding of the Quran and Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was another level. Okay. But this man, Nafi ibn Azraq would come and he would start debating with Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu on different issues related to Quran Kareem. He would even object against ayahs of Quran Kareem. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying here, in this ayah he's saying this, and in that ayah he's saying this. That doesn't make any sense. That's what I was saying. When I started reading about it, I was like, oh, this guy is far from being a Sahabi. I mean, it's even questionable if he's a believer or not. If this man is even a believer. So, there's a question that he brought to Ibn Abbas, this Nafi ibn Azraq. And I just want to show you his attitude. This is very typical of some people even not in our times, right? And it's a very irreligious and irreverent type of attitude that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't like, especially towards elders. And of elders, these were the elders of the elders, the Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in. But the way he dealt with them, the way he tried to disgrace them and disrespect them was just another level. So he came to Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu while he was in Makkah Mukarramah in the Haram, and people were gathering around him, and he just kind of found his way through and said, Ibn Abbas, right? This is how he's calling him, radiallahu anhu. He says, Tufti an-nasa fi an-namla wal-qamla. You always give fatwa to people about these small issues, right? Namla wal-qamla, he's referring to, like, people come with questions related to, like, if the blood of a mosquito comes on me, what should I do, right? Or, if I bleed from my hand, then... So he's making fun of such small fiqhi masail that people bring up that, what is this? This is nothing. Dumb questions that people ask you. You always are answering those questions. No, I'll ask you the important question. Sifli ilahaka alladhi ta'bud. Describe to me the God that you worship. He's a Muslim. He's asking Ibn Abbas, describe for me your God whom you worship. So Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu put his head down because of this, just the type of question that he asked. And it just so happened that Husayn ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhuma was sitting in the gathering at the time. And the Khawarij don't like Ali ibn Abi Talib, they wouldn't like his son Husayn ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib either. So he was sitting there. So Husayn radiallahu anhu wanted to get this man off of Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma's back. So he says, Ilayya ibn al-Azraq, come to me. So what does he say to the grandson of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? He says, Lastu iyaka as'al. Get out of my business. I'm not asking you the question. I asked him. Ajib. This man was something else. So Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu says, Ya ibn al-Azraq, respectfully, Innahu min Ahl Bayt. The person you're talking to like this, he's from the Ahl Bayt of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay? Wahum warathatul ilm. These people are the inheritors of the knowledge. You're asking a question, you're seeking knowledge. They are the people who are the inheritors of that knowledge. Why are you talking to him like that? You should be asking him the question. And what Husayn radiallahu anhu was trying to do was to kind of turned Nafi ibn Azraq away from Ibn Abbas because he knew he was going to bombard him. So to save and protect Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he was turning his attention toward him. So both were trying to protect each other. Anyways, Nafi turns towards Husayn radiallahu anhu. What does Husayn say? He says, Nafi, إِنَّهُ مَنْ وَضَعَ دِينَهُ عَلَى الْقِيَاسِ لَمْ يَزَلِ الدَّهْرُ فِي الْإِلْتِبَاسِ. It's a rhyme. Sounds like a rhyme, doesn't it? Whoever puts his deen on the basis of opinion, he follows his own opinion and follows his rationale instead of the Quran and the Sunnah for understanding the deen, he will always remain in a confused state. Iltibas, always confused. He can never find the way of guidance. Right? Qiyas, what does qiyas mean? One who is always using his head, his intellect, and never trusting in people. Those who know more than him, because he thinks he knows the most. Sa'ilan nakiban anil minhaj. He's always questioning and always deviating from the minhaj. Minhaj means from the path. Ta'inan bil i'wajaj. And he's always poking, taunting, questioning bil i'wajaj because he's deviated. And asking dumb questions that are questions of deviation. He's really referring to him. ضَالًا عَنِ السَّبِيلِ. And he's taken off the straight path. He's astray. قَائِلًا غَيْرَ الْجَمِيلِ. And whatever he says is not good. So I'm going to just sort of say it again, just so you can hear the rhyme in it. He says, مَنْ وَضَعَ دِينَ وَلَا الْقِيَاسِ لَمْ يَزِلِ الدَّهْرُ فِي الْإِلْتِبَاسِ سائلا ناكبا عن المنهاج طاعنا بالإعوجاج ضالا عن السبيل قائلا غير الجميل. Right? So Nafi got really angry. But Husayn radiallahu anhu said such beautiful words that embodied the best nasiha that man needed at that time. This man, Nafi ibn Azraq, would go to Sahaba ridwanullahi majmain just to debate, argue, and dispute with them. Just for that reason, right? So he came to Imran ibn Husayn radiallahu anhu as well. And what was Nafi ibn Azraq's objection against Imran ibn Husayn? Why did you not fight on the side of Ali ibn Abi Talib against Aisha Siddiqah and against Muawiyah? You should have fought, because his belief was to not fight against Muawiyah and not to fight against Aisha radiallahu anha was kufr. So in the eyes of Nafi', Imran ibn Husayn was already a kafir. Na'udhu billah. Listen to how he talks. He comes to him with his group of people. وَأَصْحَابُهُ Ata Nafi ibn Azraq wa ashabuhu. It's a group of people. He's got a gang of people with him. They said, halakta ya Imran. Imran, you're destroyed. He said, ma halaktu. He said, I'm not destroyed. What happened? They said, no, you are destroyed. Your akhirah is destroyed. You're going to the hellfire. He said, ma alladhi ahlakani. Why? Why am I destroyed? So now they're using an ayah of the Quran to prove their viewpoint. They say, he recites the ayah, وَقَاتِلُوهُمْ حَتَّى لَا تَكُونَ فِتْنَةً وَيَكُونَ الدِّينُ كُلُّهُ لِلَّهِ. Fight with them until there's no fitna left and all of deen is for Allah. This ayah was revealed upon Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in regards to who? Mushrikeen. They're using this ayah in regards to Aisha Siddiqah radiallahu anha. So Imran radiallahu anhu says, قَاتَلْنَاهُمْ حَتَّى نَفَيْنَاهُمْ. We already killed them. That happened. And we already exiled them. They've left the Arabian Peninsula. فَكَانَ الدِّينُ كُلُّهُ لِلَّهِ. And the whole deen became for Allah in the Arabian Peninsula. إِن شِئْتُمْ حَدَّثْتُكُمْ حَدِيثًا سَمِعْتُهُ مِن رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ. If you want, I will teach you a hadith that you can hear from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I can teach you a hadith that I heard from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam myself. You know what he's teaching them? Don't try to understand the Quran directly. Use the hadith to understand it better. Right? They're trying to understand the Quran directly. Learn it through the hadith. Where are you going to learn your hadith from? Through the Sahaba Ridwanullahi Majma'in. So go to the Sahaba. This is what he's teaching them implicitly in his statement. They said, Anta sami'ta min Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You heard this from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam yourself? Naam. So now he explains. He says, Shahidtu Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam waqad ba'atha jayshan min al-muslimina ila al-mushrikeen. He said, what happened was, I was with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam once when he sent out a expedition of Muslims, Sahaba Ridwanullahi Majma'in, to a group of mushriks. فَلَمَّا لَقَوْهُمْ قَاتِلُهُمْ. They fought with them, with the mushrikeen, and it was a big battle, فَمَنَحُوهُمْ أَكْتَافَهُمْ. And the mushrikeen were completely leveled, meaning the Muslims were victorious. فَحَمَلَ رَجُلٌ مِّن لُحْمَةِ عَلَى رَجُلٍ مِّنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ بِالرُّمْحِ. There was one man from amongst the Muslims who took out his lance to kill one of the mushrikeen. فَلَمَّا غَشِيَ. When he was about to kill him, the man said, أَشْهَدُ أَن لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ إِنِّي مُسْلِمٌ. أَشْهَدُ أَن لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ إِنِّي مُسْلِمٌ. So the Muslim, the Sahabi who had his lance in his hand, he still went ahead and killed him. He came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam later on, feeling guilty for what he had done. He said, Ya Rasulullah, halaktu. I'm destroyed. He said, Ma alladhi sana'ata, what have you done? He wouldn't respond. He asked him again, what did you do? No response. What did you do? Then the man, Sahabi, told him what he had done. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, فَهَلَّا شَقَقْتَ عَنْ بَطْنِ فَعَلِمْتَ مَا فِي قَلْبِي. Why didn't you open his heart to find out what was in it? Was it iman or kufr? Since you can't do that, you shouldn't have killed him and just accepted him for his word. He said, Ya Rasulullah, لَوْ شَقَقْتُ بَطْنَ لَكُنْتُ أَعْلَمَ مَا فِي قَلْبِي. If I was able to open his chest, I would know what was in his heart. So then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, فَلَا أَنْتَ قَبِلْتَ مَا تَكَلَّمِي وَلَا أَنْتَ تَعْلَمَ مَا فِي قَلْبِي. You did not accept what he said, and you cannot know what is inside his heart, so then you made a mistake. Then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam stayed quiet. A few days later, this Sahabi passed away. The Sahabi passed away. They buried him. They went to his grave the next day, and his body was on the surface of the earth. So they said, لَعَلَّ عَدُوًّا نَبَشَهُ. Maybe the enemies had dug his body out. Right? Out of spite, hatred. So he says that we buried him again. This time we ordered our young ones to stand guard so that nobody comes. Next morning, with those guards around him, his body was still out. Next morning. This happened a third time, and this time we ourselves were standing guard over the grave to make sure nobody comes. And next morning, we wake up and his body's outside the grave. We realize the matter is something else. This is not about an enemy. This is something between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then we came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, explained to him what happened. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to us, there are people who commit worse sins than what he did. There's people who do many worse sins, major sins than what he did. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted his body, the earth, not to accept his body, just to show you the izzat and the importance of the kalima la ilaha illallah. Just to show you the importance of kalima la ilaha illallah, what did he do? He did not allow his body to stay in the ground. So the earth just spit it out. Because he did not have value for the kalima. Even if it's in words, even if it's superficially said, still. And you're telling me, go and fight against Aisha Siddiqa? You're telling me to go fight against my Muslim brothers and sisters? I can't do it. I can't do it. So basically he's telling them, there's no way even you should be fighting against your Muslim brothers and sisters, because they used to kill anybody, any Muslim that came in their path. It'd be a caravan of people with children and other children, women, and men, they would wipe all of them out, kill all of them, very ruthless. And they used to say that these people are all kafir, right? So he's explaining to them, he said, you have no respect for the kalima, la ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, that people are making proclamation of the kalima, they call themselves Muslims, and you are killing them? Anyhow, so these were some things that we learned from the life of Imran ibn Husayn radiallahu anhu. It just tells us that fitnas had already started in their times, and they were trying to do their best to inform and to educate the people about the true path and to inform people to stay on the haqq, even the worst of people like Nafi ibn Arzaq. Nowadays, people have enough respect to stay away and say, listen, you have your opinion, I have my opinion. He was trying to enforce his opinion, impose his opinion on a sahabi of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, of all people, as if he has more knowledge, as if he has a better understanding of Quran and Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam than even he does. Unfortunately, we have that understanding even in our time. There are some people who think like that even in our time. Study a little bit of deen, maybe watch a few YouTube videos, and study a few books here and there, and then they become great scholars and they're going around making objections. Why did he say this? Why did he say that? He shouldn't talk like this. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Right? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all. Just one last thing, and I'm going to finish this inshallah, and then next week we'll start with a new sahabi. There was a tabi'i, his name is Abu Nadra. He said, we were with Imran ibn Husayn radiallahu anhu, and we were studying the Quran, and we were studying, like learning some ilm with him. A man came and he said, Imran, he's talking to a sahabi of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, says, لا تتحدثوا إلا بما في القرآن. Don't speak of anything except if it's in the Quran Kareem. Meaning, don't just make up stuff on your own. Don't just make up stuff on your own. If it's in the Quran, talk about it. If it's not in the Quran, don't talk about it. So this concept of going directly to Quran, we don't need hadith, we don't need sahaba, we don't need what? Fuqaha, we don't need muhaddithun. That fitna had already started. So what does Imran ibn Husayn say, radiallahu anhu? He says, Innaka la ahmaq, you are a donkey. أوجدت في القرآن صلاة الظهر 4 ركعات والعصر 4 ركعات. Do you see anywhere in Quran there's an ayah that says صلاة الظهر is 4 rak'ahs, Asr is 4 rak'ahs, لا يجهر في شيء منهما, and there will be no jahr, meaning that you won't recite Quran loudly there. والمغرب بثلاث, and Maghrib is 3 rak'ahs, يجهر بالقراءة في الركعتين, and you're going to recite Quran loudly in the first 2 rak'ahs. وَلَا يَجْهَرُ بِالْقِرَاءَةِ فِي الرَّكَعَةِ, and then in the last rak'ah you won't recite loudly. And how about Isha? Is there anything about Isha in the Quran where it says it's 4 rak'ahs, يُجْهَرُ بِالْقِرَاءَةِ فِي الرَّكَعَتَيْن, that you will do jahr in qira'at in the first 2 rak'ahs, and the last 2 rak'ahs you're not going to do jahr? Is there any ayah? Why do you pray your salah then? Right? You know what the Hanafiya take from this? Oh, now we know which 2 rak'ahs we have to do qira'at in, right? For Dhuhr, for Asr, for Maghrib, for Isha. So we picked up on this, right? And we use this as evidence. And Imran ibn Husayn radiallahu anhu, who was very close in his madhab, in his understanding of the hadith and masail, to Ali radiallahu anhu and Abdullah bin Masud radiallahu anhu, because they were all from the same area, Basra, Kufa. Though Kufa is a little bit far away from Basra, but in Iraq. And so this was the same opinion of Abdullah bin Masud and the same opinion of Ali radiallahu anhu. The Shafi'i have a different opinion. So in regards to Dhuhr and Asr, you can recite Surah and Surah Fatiha and Surah even in the last 2 rak'ahs, according to them. But for us, it's only in the first 2 rak'ahs. And in Maghrib, the first 2 rak'ahs, the last rak'ah is just Surah Fatiha, or you could stay quiet as well. Where do we get this from? This hadith of Rasulullah, this hadith of Imran ibn Husayn radiallahu anhu. Obviously, he didn't pick this out of his pocket. Where did he get it from? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we got a double benefit from. We learned the message of everything doesn't have to be in Quran Kareem. And number 2, how many rak'ahs you're going to do qira'atan, which ones you're going to do jahr, which ones you're not going to do jahr. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun al mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Jazakumullahu khairan.